What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to do a little tech video on 700 vests versus 700 non-vests. And the reason I thought about this is because I'm working on a 700 vest currently, and I have a bunch of 700 non-vest motors and a ton of 700 non-vest parts sitting around. So I thought this would be kind of a fun video to compare and talk about why the 700 vest motors actually make more power than the non-vest motors. Okay, the first thing I'm going to talk about is cylinders. Here we have a 824 non-vest cylinder, a 220 non-vest cylinder, and a 340 700 vest cylinder. So the biggest difference you're going to see in these is the exhaust port. This is an 824. You can see it's very oval, right? 220, much more rectangular. 340 vest, almost identical to the 220 as far as exhaust port goes, right? So these are very, very, very similar in porting. This is slightly different, okay? Now, with these being so close, I'm gonna go ahead and say they're damn near identical looking in the porting. Not perfectly, but very, very, very similar, okay? So then you start to think, well, is it the vest? Does the vest make more power? And honestly, the answer is no. The variable exhaust system, or vest as people refer to them as, all it does is when you're low on the RPMs, you're snapping on the throttle, you get a lot of response. Right now, you got the power. Well, that's because this effectively changes your port timing because the valve is pushed down. It's making your exhaust port tighter, you get more velocity, right? Now, as your RPMs are rising, you're building more pressure, okay? And what operates your vest is pressure being pushed through this little hole here, okay? That compresses the spring, and as it goes up in RPM, that valve slides up. And effectively, at wide open throttle, high RPM, you have the full exhaust port just like the 220 would be all the time. What the vest does is help you in the bottom to mid-range, okay? So that brings us to our next topic, or theory. These do have a better bottom end. That's all there is to it. Or at least give you a feeling of having more because they are a snappier motor. But as far as peak horsepower goes, the real difference is in the head, okay? This is the good old 97, hard to find purple head. Everyone thinks those are the bee's knees. Really, there's no advantage to having this over, let's say, a 98 head, aside from the looks, okay? The domes, pretty much identical. They both run 125 PSI for compression. Now, that is the key point. 125 PSI of compression. Anybody that says their non-vest in stock form has 140 plus, either you have excessive fuel or oil in your cylinder, which is bumping up the numbers, your gauge is inaccurate, or you're full of shit. They don't run that high. But a 700 vest, on the other hand, does run 140 plus PSI. 20 points or 20 PSI higher between that and this. And if you read online, everyone says you can't run them. They're different. Yes, you can. It just bumps up the compression. These non-vest motors are designed to run a lower octane fuel. These are designed for premium fuel. Now, the reason that's why you have a switch, you can change it from premium and regular, is because it's such a higher compression motor that if you run a lower grade fuel, you have to retard the timing, which you can't do on these. You can't advance retard timing with the flick of the switch with the old Ducati CDIs. So there's the real advantage as far as I'm concerned. It's all in the head. It's a higher compression setup. It bolts right on. And yes, you can run that head on a non-vest. However, you have to run good premium fuel all the time. You can't just switch it and run regular fuel. which if you're like me, regardless, I always run premium no matter what. So I think this is the hot ticket as far as making more power out of a non-vest without buying an aftermarket head. Because essentially, what's an aftermarket head do? It bumps the compression, especially if we're going in higher elevation, stuff like that. A vest head would work perfect. Premium fuel at sea level, it'll run. And it'll run good. And it'll make more power than having the old head. That's my theory on it. Obviously, I didn't even get into the cars because going from a Keane to a Mikuni, you're really not going to gain any horsepower from doing that swap. You might be able to make it run better, run cleaner, especially in the bottom end, but it's not going to make any real difference as far as peak horsepowers go. That's why I didn't really bring those up. But yeah, let me know what you think. If anybody else has any other input, let's hear it in the comment section.